curiosity was your most powerful tool? Think about it. The doors curiosity opens, what you could teach someone, and what you might just learn. That sales call you just crushed, navigating that tense conversation at work, finding that perfect solution for the customer after hours of brainstorming. You guys, each one of those scenarios is all about curiosity. Legit. If you don't remain curious to get to the root of the problem, to innovate the best possible solution, to heck, insert a million things here. Without curiosity, you just lost your edge. Hey there, I'm Becky Freemall, and here's what I've got for you.
Curiosity, all that is ideas, is coming up with, we look at it as, what's your idea of your business? Why did you come up with the idea? It's because they're curious about whether there's a need from the customer standpoint, whether or not this business idea has a chance to be successful. So those really are interchangeable terms in some aspects, and I may start using that more often now.
Tom Tanner is a senior business advisor with the Greater Roanoke and NRV Small Business Development Center. He has counseled more than 3,000 business owners in his decades of experience, and he also owns his own tax and accounting firm. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Oh, glad to be here. Makes me feel old doing 3,000. It's actually probably more than that, but I started early.
I like to tell everybody when I say I've got decades of experience, it's also because, I started when I was 5 years old.
That's right.
So we'll just say
That's
that for
me.
you as well.
Yep. Started when I was really young.
So, Tom, not only do you counsel businesses, you own your own, so you understand the importance of it. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, so to speak. And I really want to talk more about just all the counseling that you've done and the businesses that you've helped as part of the Greater Roanoke, Small Business Development Center, NRV, that you help throughout our area, throughout Southwest Virginia. And for listeners who maybe don't understand what NRV is, that's the New River Valley. So that's kind of where our Blacksburg is. People nationally might know Virginia Tech is in that region. A lot of innovation coming out of there, as well as here in Roanoke, Virginia. I would love to ask, just right off the top, what was it that drew you into this business and helping other people build that business, realize their dreams, and what keeps you energized year after year doing this?
So, of course, I owned my own business for 25 years. And certainly I decided after 25 years, I sold my business in 2006. And I said, over the last 25 years, I probably made every mistake possible. So maybe I need to teach other people how not to do the same mistakes I made. So there's a lot of truth to that. So and when I retired, I was like, I'm way too young to retire. So when this job came up, I said, oh, that sounds fun. That I can work with other businesses, teach them how to get their business going, teach them how to run their business correctly and grow their business and handle the whole aspects of operating a business. And, if I was a new business owner, there's nothing I like better than hearing somebody who's already, like you said, done the talk and walked the walk or whatever, has done it. So, so that's kind of the whole gist of it. And that's why I'm still here 17 years later or 18 years later, whatever it is.
We were talking a little bit before, we got to the podcast just about curiosity and all the different words people can use for it. Remaining open-minded, customer discovery, asking the right questions, figuring out what the next best step is. I mean, curiosity really is kind of the foundation for all the business lingo, all the things that we talk about moving forward to make sure that we're taking that next best step. And when you're talking about 3,000 businesses, I would love to know if you have anything you could share with us about how maybe a business owner's curiosity led to that unexpected breakthrough, whether it was the idea they had or pivoting an idea, but just when you saw someone say, oh, wow, they asked the right question and that completely changed their trajectory.
So it's interesting when we started talking about again, before we started, about the word curiosity. And I had never really associated it with what I do in regards to helping businesses and figuring out the paths for them, et cetera, et cetera. And I started thinking, and on our break, I said, curiosity, all that is ideas, is coming up with, we look at it as, what's your idea of your business? Why did you come up with the idea? It's because they're curious about whether there's a need from the customer standpoint, whether or not this business idea has a chance to be successful. So those really are interchangeable terms in some aspects, and I may start using that more often now. But
You're welcome.
I'll give you credit for it. So, gosh, I got hundreds of examples of people who use this on all the time in curiosity, because every single idea that comes in the door is using ideas, or using curiosity. They're wondering whether or not they got an idea. It could be something as simple as I've got this idea about starting a particular restaurant or a particular product or whatever it is. But it's even the existing businesses, and that's probably where a lot of the lack of curiosity is, even though that's where it should be, is I'm operating this business, I'm in my day-to-day activity, I come in, I do this, I close up, and rinse and repeat. Okay? So the question comes up, and I always approach the clients when they come in is, okay, you're doing that, what's the next step? What are you missing? How can you take it to the next level? How can you grow your business? Some clients are kind of like, I'm happy where I'm at, I don't want to do anything else, I don't want any more responsibility. The other ones will stand back and go, oh, I've never really thought about that. I mean, it could be something as simple as, coffee shop. Let's take an example of a coffee shop that serves coffee. And their customers ask them, where do you get your beans at? Or who roasts your coffee? And you go, well, we have a little roaster in the back, and we just do this ourselves and buying beans wherever you can. And that turns into, maybe we should start doing this and making a business out of roasting coffee and packaging it and selling it to the customers across the counter, selling it to other coffee shops, selling it on the internet, selling it to all across the nation, to wholesalers or whatever, and taking it to the next level by just simply asking yourself, do customers really have an interest in us doing this? And asking the right questions. Of course, curiosity really comes into effect. You think on a national level, all the big names. We all know what Airbnb is. So, Airbnb started because a bunch of college roommates were looking for an additional income to live with, so they wondered, I wonder if we just threw an air mattress on the floor and charged people $10 a night and fed them breakfast, if they would people would pay. And he found that they did. And then they said, I wonder if we can get our neighbors to do that too. And then that was that's curiosity. It's what we call customer discovery, but it's basically the same. If they didn't have that curiosity to ask those questions, there might not be an Airbnb today.
Right. It sounds like, too, especially in your space, because I would assume, just based on Small Business Development Center, you're dealing with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups. I'm sure you're also dealing with just small businesses that have been kind of evenly cruising along over the years. But I think curiosity helps them with that initial idea. And it almost sounds like you're saying, hey, as you go through, don't lose the curiosity that got you the idea, because you might need to pivot, or not even pivot, but just grow on that idea. And you were talking about like the bigger names. I mean, the one I always think of, since we were talking about coffee shops, is Starbucks.
Yeah.
If you think about that, sure, I don't know how the heck they started. They probably were like, dude, we want to sell a cup of coffee. It tastes good, and people relax and enjoy it. But I really think the case studies that I have seen and the articles on Starbucks is that they really evolved. Sure, their product is coffee, but what they're selling is community. It's a meeting place for people to come together, and it's that curiosity when it was time to go to the next level. And obviously, as a marketing strategist myself, I love those stories, which is, okay, you could have gotten stuck on the we're just going to sell a cup of coffee and that's what we're marketing, or let's market a bigger thing. Let's market the story. Let's market the impact that we make on our communities. And do you see entrepreneurs, so obviously they're probably not at the level of Starbucks, maybe get stuck in an original assumption they need to break out of that?
I see that all the time. And because you got to remember, the Small Business Development Center, we're dealing mostly with those, majority of them are those micro type of businesses. They have 20 or less employees, and they're not those super high grower type businesses. I mean, we have companies doing $2 or $3 million, but we don't have them, customers doing $100 million. Because if that was the case, they could go pay somebody to do what we do. So our aim is more to help those businesses get to the point they can't afford for free advising services. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of them, they want to open a restaurant. Okay, they go in, they open this restaurant, and they're happy with their restaurant, and that's all they ever want to do. And then you see the other people that go, certainly many local examples of, they're happy with this restaurant, and then they go, well, maybe we need another restaurant. So they open another one or a third one, or maybe they get a food truck, or maybe they do catering. So now they're seeing the capability of beyond just that one item or that one business, that they can grow and do more. And that's, part of this whole process of what makes the difference between an entrepreneur and a small business owner. Those terms are sometimes just thrown together, and they're not. They're two different things. An entrepreneur could be a small business owner, but a small business owner is not necessarily an entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
So it's the entrepreneur is the person who looks at it as a risk taker, who wants to think about how to grow their business and how to expand the business. Where sometimes a small business owner is more the person who is just, they're operating their business, they're doing a good job at it, that's all they want to do. Their sights are not on expansion and growing and taking over the world or whatever it might be. So.
I think that's interesting too, and it just resonates with me in the fact that, I started Market Exec 2 years ago as a fractional chief marketing officer, and I think that kind of goes to the point of what you're saying is that evolution where, maybe 15, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago in the marketing space, people thought of kind of freelancers, and we're going to hire a graphic designer, or we might just hire a web developer. But if you're thinking about a chief marketing officer, well, that's a full-time job. And somewhere along the line, I will not take credit for this, there was someone smart enough to say, but why? Like, remain curious. Why is a chief marketing officer and an executive team member, why do they have to be full-time? Why does it have to be a full-time C-suite? Because a lot of these small companies need that strategy, but they don't have the ability, to your point, or the budget to bring on something that heavy, like a full-time chief marketing officer. And so I think that evolution really helps people start to move and pivot their ideas into that space. And now for me, again, I did not make up fractional chief marketing officer, but that is what my business is founded on. But I have seen myself evolve as more of a business strategist, and helping my companies grow their business just happens to be by way of marketing. But in being in the position I've been in, there's a lot of business strategies you may or may not even consider marketing, to help them grow. And so you start to look at things and be like, okay, how can I pivot this? How can I move this idea?
Well, one thing I could say is probably the one thing that came out of COVID that may have been positive, there wasn't much, is the ability to understand that you don't need to be working for a company as an employee. That's when independent contractors kind of took off. And individuals found out, oh, we really like this particular situation. And businesses found out, oh, it's actually cheaper for us to do this and better for us.
Yeah.
And all of those, independent contractors are their own little business owners. And a lot of those little business owners that started off with let's just say that they were working as a graphic designer for this big company, and they decide to be a contract employee for this big company, now have turned that independent contractor relation into maybe a very successful advertising business or graphic design business because of given that opportunity to go out on their own, but still have the, I guess, the safety net initially of contracts with your old employer. So, and I see a lot of companies are looking at saying, you know, we really need to look at our business internally and what can we do different? Or, you know, just because this is the way it's always been done, you know, the old thinking, we need to think outside the box. Well, that's a term that's been around forever, but a lot of people have never done it until more recently. You're starting to see more people go, well, let's really think outside the box. And that's where curiosity comes into case, is that curiosity is the definition of thinking outside the box.
Here's a question for you. You said you've counseled more than 3,000 business owners over the years that you've been doing this. There's got to be a pattern that you've seen that you could share. Please tell me yes, because I want to know what the answer is. When you look at the data and you're like, okay, I'm starting to see a pattern, and you probably started seeing it forever ago, of what your successful business owners have done to continue staying in business and continue growing and evolving compared to maybe those that went out of business. And I wrote that book, Brand Voice, People Plus Data Drive Results. And that's the point. Like, data speaks volumes about what you're doing right and wrong. And it's the people that need to look at that data and analyze it and say, okay, how do I remain curious about this? How do I analyze it and turn it into something? What patterns have you seen? What can I do, Tom Tanner, to stay in business 10 years from now?
So some of those things, what we just talked about, is keeping up with the marketplace, watching where you're at in the life cycle, making sure you're not getting behind your competitors, understanding your competitors and how to get ahead. But it's also something that is certainly lacking nowadays, as anything else, is customer service, is being able to present. The most successful companies out there are the ones that really are providing great customer service. And that no matter what happens, if you don't provide good customer service, somebody else is going to come up and provide better customer service, and they're going to steal it from you. And along with that comes over-deliver to your customer, always doing more than what your customers expect. The other thing I always like to say is listen to your customers. Talk to your customers. Too many business owners, they just do their thing and they don't get out to actually ask their questions, ask what the customer wants, how are things going, understand their needs, so that they can continue to adjust their business to reflect the needs of the customer. And of course, we talked about micro and macro analysis of the marketplace. And certainly the financial guy in me has to come out and say, you've got to be successful, you've got to watch your numbers. You've got to understand your numbers. You've got to know your financials, because you could be super successful and still be broke. Because the money may be coming in, but it's going out just as fast as it's coming in. So that's where sometimes we dig into it and go, okay, your revenue is growing at 20% a year, but you're losing money. Why is that? Let's look into it. And, it may be a pricing issue. It may be a cost issue. After COVID, the prices went way up and we had some massive inflation. And unfortunately, a lot of clients did not raise their prices to reflect that. They tried to go, well, we need to try to eat as much as we can of that. But what it did is end up not raising your prices enough, or didn't raise them at all, to cause you to start losing money versus maybe you were making money a couple of years ago. So anyway, the numbers are a big portion of it, really understanding how to do that. And to me, that's all part of the whole picture. Of course, I could add a bunch of other things like, good leadership skills, of course, good marketing, but
yeah, there you go. I'll pay you later for that
Yeah,
comment.
so
Just kidding.
all of that comes into the same pictures, but those traits to me are wanting to do, doing everything you can to do good customer service. You're always looking to figure out how to do it better, do it faster, whatever, listening to your customers and looking at your numbers.
So, question for you in regards to your years of doing this, working with a small business development center, would you say that the successful business owners you've seen had the best initial ideas, or were they the ones who were willing to pivot and ask the right, or I should say, ask the right questions and pivot if needed?
So my first comment is that ideas, I always used to say this. Matter of fact, I used to say it on my LinkedIn page. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Okay. So it's not the ideas, because we all have ideas. If I took advantage of all the ideas that I came up with in my life, I'd be rich now. But I didn't implement them. So it's the person who implements it and knows how to actually make it work is the one who's going to be successful. So ideas are important, but they don't mean a whole lot without somebody who can come in and actually turn into a viable business, produce revenue, et cetera, and take it to the next level. And sometimes that happens by a good entrepreneur or a good curiosity person takes somebody else's idea that couldn't do anything with it and takes it to the next level. Or takes perfect example is you brought up Starbucks. Starbucks started off as just one store in Seattle, and somebody saw some potential there and took it over, and that's how it blew up. Certainly there's plenty of other examples. I mean, that's how Tesla started. Elon Musk bought Tesla for cheap because he saw potential of doing something with it, and that's how that took off. So,
do you have any examples you could share, like over the years of doing this, of somebody who really had to question their path with everyone in the industry does it this way, and what gave them the confidence to actually try something different? Because that's more of a mental game, and I'm sure you feel like a true therapist at times when you're counseling business owners.
Yeah. So just general thinking would be more or less, and I can't give an exact example, but you could just take an example of a business who is operating. Well, you brought one up earlier, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, the coffee shop. So the same thing could exist for a bookstore. Is a bookstore, traditional bookstores are, you walk in, you buy a book, and you leave, and et cetera, et cetera. Nowadays, a lot of bookstores are reinventing that and looking at it and going, how do we do something different? Or they're turning into a used bookstores, or there's a company just opened up recently that sells used books, but they're also making it a gathering place. They sell food, they sell alcohol. They kind of make it as you said, kind of a gathering spot, kind of like Starbucks is, but is now taking it a little bit different approach with adding books and stuff to figure out how do we bring more people in to make it more exciting. What more products can we sell? So they're kind of taking the approach and go, I don't want to be just a bookstore. I want to be something more than a bookstore. And that could be the same with just your whole strategy. It could be a restaurant that has a lot of items on their menu because that's what everybody says. You have to have a lot of items on your menu, and they just go back and go, well, 90% of the time we only sell 5 items. Let's just put 5 items on our menu because we're going against traditional thinking. That's kind of a small example, but those are just some of the processes that you go, I want to do something a little different than what everybody else is doing. That's where you see a lot of people going to flat rate pricing now for a lot of service businesses that you didn't see many years ago. I mean, even accountants and people are going to that, but even landscapers are starting to go to that where they just go, okay, we take care of everything for you for the whole summer for this price. And people go, okay, that sounds like a deal. Where everybody else is going, well, they charge me $50 a week to mow this, and every week they give me a bill for $50. And people go, well, this guy's only going to charge me this much, even though when you add it all up, it's maybe more than $50 a week. But the point of it is, you're thinking through the process and going, how can we just? It could be a repackaging. It could be a marketing. It may be part of marketing,
Yeah.
let's say it. But you're going against the norms. You're doing something different than what the industry says you should be doing.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, pricing obviously is a big part of the 4Ps when you're talking about marketing.
Yeah.
And I think it can be hard, especially at the beginning, and especially if you have a new idea, because you don't know what people will pay for it. So you've just got to start kind of doing, as they say, some A/B testing, like test it out, see which does A work or does B work, and then go
Yeah.
down that path, and then splinter it again and do another A/B testing. If you decide to go down to A, then splinter that again. Okay, let's try this. And again, it just goes back to curiosity. You just always have to be, I think, in that curiosity mode, always learning, always being, agile and willing to pivot. I think the moment you hit that knowing stage, if you ever hit it, oof, like the red flags start flying, because you just don't know everything. There's always something you don't know. There's always something that you need to ask the question of. Because as soon as you think you got it all figured out and, hey, I'm Starbucks, I'm selling coffee, and I know it, then you never pivot, you never move, you never grow to the community center and a global enterprise corporation.
Well, technology is changing so rapidly now that
Yeah.
that puts in effect. I just brought up about landscapers. The trend nowadays is, people are one person goes out with 4 robotic lawnmowers and they mow commercial property. So you only have one employee who sits there with a joystick. So, I mean, that's kind of keeping up with technology and going against the grain, where you used to seeing a bunch of people out there with zero-turn motors rolling around, and now you got one guy sitting there with a joystick and throwing out mowers and then loads them back up on his trailer and goes to the next one.
Right. So curiosity, this is something that, we were also talking about earlier, I think really helps in the world of conflict resolution, helps with, I've heard people call it the 10-minute sweaty conversation, but, life is not all sunshine and roses, and we're not all skipping off into the sunset. There are hard conversations that we have to have. And I think really remaining curious about the other person, and what is going on in their mind will only help you more in fixing it. Whether it's, hey, my clients aren't buying from me, they just don't know. Well, actually, maybe you just don't know, and you need to understand from them what it is that they're looking for that you don't have.
Yeah.
It could be a multitude of things, but when you talk about your role in counseling and advising business owners, small businesses, entrepreneurs who are trying to think about how to take that next best step, and you see them going down the wrong path, or they see they're going down the wrong path, but they just don't know why, or they're like, no, I got this figured out. How do you approach those conversations when you know you can help them, but you're not quite sure they're open to the advice? Because by the very nature of being an advisor, I'm sure you find yourself in that spot sometimes.
Yeah, more often than not. And heaven forbid there ever be a business owner who has an ego. I mean, it always comes down to just you're a counselor, but you're a coach, you're an advisor, you're a consultant. Is that you somehow have to twist it so that the idea is theirs, that they need to change. All you can do is kind of lead them down a path and go, have you thought about this? Or what would you do if, under this scenario? Or what do you think is wrong right now and why you're not growing? Because it's got to be their idea. We are not consultants. We advise or counsel or whatever. And hopefully they try to pick up on our ideas. And it doesn't necessarily mean we're right. Sometimes we're just, we're sometimes just a brainstorming, part of the brainstorming session to come up with ideas. And sometimes just sitting down with myself and maybe the business owner, maybe a couple of other people in the company, and just talking and then coming up with, oh, maybe this is what's wrong and how we can fix it. But they have to realize, I mean, a lot of them are stubborn, and I probably was too, and probably still am, but I'm sure I was stubborn as a business owner and said, oh, I already know how to do this, and you don't need to tell me how to fix this or whatever. So.
If we did not all have, because we do not all have, the Tom Tanner Senior Business Advisor of the Small Business Development Center, who has counseled more than 3,000 businesses. If it's just me and my own brain, what advice would you give somebody when, based on the advice maybe you've given people, like what do they need to question? What do they need to learn when it comes to really the critical phase of testing? Like, is this business idea good? Does it actually have legs? Are we actually building something that's worth doing?
So, first off, I would always suggest any business owner create kind of a, if they don't have, of course anybody can use the SBDC, but let's just say they should reach out to maybe other people that they trust within the business community that they can sit down and discuss their business with. I think that's always a good idea, is pick 2 or 3 people. When I was in business, I would meet with several other people. In my case, I was a member of an organization of other business owners like mine throughout the United States, and we would get together on a regular meeting just to talk about what's going on in your business, how we can improve it, you know, where's the next opportunity. And I think that's very useful. Or find somebody else in the community that could be a mentor to you, because there's plenty of business owners that are more than happy, that may be in the business for 30 years, they're more than happy to provide you some guidance or a mentorship to help you along. Some people aren't, but there are many that will. So that's certainly one of the first things. Regards to thinking about your process, let's say you have a good idea. There are processes we use, or I recommend more than anything else, what's called the lean startup process. And the lean startup process works not only for, you know, people starting new businesses, but people who are in business that may be trying to expand into something else or pivot or whatever it may be. And there's a good book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup. So that's something I would look into. Steve Blank is kind of the master of the lean startup process too.
It sounds like people kind of are always the answer. I know people talk about AI in the digital space, but when you answered that question, it was talk to people, get their feedback, get their buy-in, and that's the same with marketing. If you're going to build that brand voice, if you want to connect with people, it's not just you that you want to find out. You need to find out if your idea actually does in fact resonate with the end user. And if it doesn't, does it mean you have the wrong idea, or does it mean you have the wrong target audience? I mean, you don't know until you start asking those questions. But so to your point, do you have a viable idea? Talk to people, do the customer discovery. And from a marketing standpoint, when you're building your brand voice, talk to people, do the customer discovery, find out. I mean, it really is it's so parallel, so parallel.
Yeah, unfortunately, too often clients come in and go, I want to do this. How do I set up my LLC? How do I get my business license? And they're kind of like, I say, whoa, you know, let's put the horse before the cart here and say, is this a business that's really needed, or is this something that really makes sense? Have you really judged the marketplace? Is there competitors doing the same thing, and what are they doing? And it may not make sense to, you know, let's go to a restaurant. Maybe they want to open a Chinese restaurant, and I say, well, maybe there's not a need for another Chinese restaurant, but there's a need for a family-owned restaurant. And they go, well, but I want to do this. Yeah, but what do customers want?
Right.
Because it does come down to what customers want, because they're the ones paying the bill.
Exactly.
So, and that's the hardest part I always have, is trying to convince clients to go, you've got to go the direction. If you listen to customers, the customers will take you to the direction that you want to go.
Right.
If you listen to yourself, you're probably going to go in the wrong direction without listening to customers.
Exactly. All right, do me a favor. Play with me here. I want to do a couple rapid fire questions. Just break up the pace a little if
Oh,
you
God, I'm not very good thinking on my
All
feet.
right, I'm going to make you do it. So mean. All right, Tom Tanner, morning person or night owl for your best strategic thinking?
Oh, that's easy. I'm a morning person. I'm up at 5:30. So.
Oof, gotcha. Early. All right, what's your go-to question when an entrepreneur brings you the sure thing business idea?
Why, or why do you think it's going to work?
Okay.
And maybe use the old, what is it, the 3 whys, the 5 whys, or whatever. Why?
Mm-hmm.
You
All
know,
why.
to really dig deep into it. But that's always my first question.
Very simple.
Why do you think it's going to
Why?
work?
Okay. What would surprise people most about what it really takes to start a business?
It's a lot more work than they think it is. People are used to working for, well, there's 2 things. One is they don't realize how much work's involved, and 2 is they don't realize how little they're going to make. At least when they're starting off.
Interesting. Okay.
Is that everybody has these grandiose projections they're going to make all this money, and they're leaving their job because they want to have more freedom and more time to do whatever they want and make more money. When you're first starting out, it's usually opposite of that.
Okay. I like that.
You may be making less money, you're working more hours, and you get less time off.
Fair. Very fair. And you're probably right. My first year, I worked my tail end off.
I said, I know it is for you. So.
I still work my tail end off, but I'm doing it for me now, and I love it. Like that's the rewarding part. You're right. I love it. But I do work hard. Speaking of coffee shops, since that's kind of our theme, I feel as though coffee shop or office for your best brainstorming session.
Well, that's easy for me because I don't drink coffee. So
There you go.
it's usually the office for me. I'm an office person or conference room or something like that. Yeah.
All right. What's one myth about entrepreneurship that drives you crazy?
One myth that drives me crazy. Told you I'm not very good thinking on my feet. I'd probably kind of go back to what I said a minute ago, that everybody thinks it's easy being an entrepreneur, and it's not.
It's not.
So.
It is not. And I actually thought about that when you answered that. I thought that might be his answer, but I didn't want to say it because you might be like, nope, Becky, there is something else. People need to hear it.
Did you think it was easy when you started, before you did? Of course, you had been associated with other programs.
No, I actually had a lot of growing up in my world. Everybody was a W-2 employee. My mom and dad were both high school teachers, and they worked, they didn't punch the clock, so to speak, but they, had it in and out of each day. And then I went into the working world, and as you know, I was a journalist for 24 years. Same thing. You reported to and did the thing. I think the biggest thing for me that was kind of interesting, and I'd heard people say this, was that whole vibe of feeling like you might be singing for your supper. There were days, not many, seconds maybe I would even say, that I'd be like, gosh, I miss the days where I can walk in and be like, I have so much work. Can't believe I have all this work to do, because now it's my job to get all that work in and to be able to have the opportunity to say, gosh, I've got so much work. But I can't say I've ever wanted to go back. It's not that I do or I don't. I really do enjoy what I'm doing. And I think because I am such a hard work, I come from a family where you work your tail off to get what you want. And it's such a rewarding experience, at least this is just me, Becky Freemall, speaking, but it's such a rewarding experience that when I really lean in and I work hard, it's my business and it's my idea that I'm seeing grow. And that is such a cool feeling, because at the end of the day, my hope is that I'm really helping somebody else. That really is my driving force. Just the other day, I got nominated for an award. Yay, awards, stock, resume stuffers, whatever. But it's only that if you let it be just that. If you really elevate it to something more. And for this, it was a client who nominated me for it. And I thought, wow, like not only am I surviving and I'm doing the thing, I feel like I'm really thriving now. Like I have clients who understand my worth. And it's not because I'm saying, look at me, I'm worth it. It's just because I'm doing the thing and it's working and they're happy. And then they go beyond that and they're like, hey, well, I'm going to nominate Becky for this award. And I'm like, wow. Like, it's small things like that you're like, okay, I'm actually making an impact. I'm really helping people. And I know that sounds like some like I want world peace comment, but I really do feel that way. And it really it just brings me joy. It fills my cup. And that's the part.
Well, I reversed that rapid fire on
Yeah.
you, but what I was trying to do, because I was hoping I figured once I got you talking, you would keep talking. But the point of it is once you get that entrepreneur bug, it's like you don't want to go back. Only reason I stay where I'm at is I'm very independent. I'm an independent contractor, and I'm very independent as if I was my own business owner. I don't think I could go work for an organization because I can't even think of the last time I worked, the last organization I actually worked for was probably the U.S. Army. So, 40 years ago.
Right.
So, so I've always been on my own, and it's hard to go back to figure, looking at it and go, could I actually work within an organization where people are working for other people who are working for other people versus people are working for me?
Right. Well, and as an entrepreneur, whether people work for me or I work for them, one of the things that I have found that has been so refreshing is I can be, well, let's be real, Tom, I'm me no matter what, whether I'm working for someone or not, but I can truly be me, and I can say to a CEO, of course, in a very tactful way and in a genuine way, like, hey, that idea isn't working. Like, if we're going down that path,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good choice or it is a good choice, but like whatever I'm saying, I don't have this feeling that I see some of my W-2 friends have, which is I've got to be that yes man or yes woman. And I've got to just make
Yep.
that leader who's sitting in the important chair feel like their idea is the best, which sometimes, to your point earlier, you said you just want to make people, like a business owner, make it feel like it's their idea. I'm all about that. And you do need to do that. But sometimes the idea they genuinely have is not great. And in this space, I can say, hey, we need to rethink that. And you're heard and you're seen. And it's so rewarding when you watch them make a tiny little pivot. It's usually not anything major. And bam, off they go to the races. And you're like, yes. I don't know, it feels good. It feels good. All right, before I let you go, Tom, I just would love to see if there's any single piece of wisdom that you would like to impart or share on all of us about, hey, someone's listening right now and they're like, I'm thinking about starting my own venture, or maybe it's time to grow. I don't know. Is there any one piece of advice you would share?
Yeah, come see us at the SBDC.
There you go.
That's what we're here for. And even if you're not local, I mean, there's 1,000 SBDC centers in the United States. So somewhere where you're listening, no matter where, there's probably a small business development center somewhere that can sit down and talk to you and mentor you, et cetera, et cetera. Or find somebody else that you can get with. You don't have to operate in a silo, and that's an issue I see a lot of small business owners do, is they got their own little business and they don't talk to anybody else. They come to work, they see their same employee, they see their customers, but they don't get that camaraderie of working with other business owners and just talking to them about releasing tension about, your staff, your customers, getting ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So being involved with other business owners is very important.
I love that you just said that, because I will tell you, I think that was the biggest surprise for me as an entrepreneur was I'm a hardcore extrovert, so I get this, but there are times that are lonelier than I thought. I'm like, God, I need to get out. And, I have a couple that, but one in particular I'm thinking of right now, they're like, we'd really like you to come in the office. They're local. Not all my clients are, but the ones who are, like, we'd like you to come in maybe just once a week. And Tom, I jumped on it. I was like, yes.
Sure. I want to see real people.
Yes. Please let me. All right. Tom Tanner, a senior business advisor with the Greater Roanoke and NRV Small Business Development Center. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me, and good luck in this future with this podcast.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
most successful businesses, the strongest teams, the biggest breakthroughs, they all started by harnessing curiosity. So what's your next best step? Make it a non-negotiable discipline. Make the intentional choice to challenge assumptions, to seek out the unknown, and to explore the space between the lines. Curiosity isn't a grand strategy, it's a daily practice. It's the small, intentional shift that rewrites the playbook and keeps you ahead of the game. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Curiosity Advantage. Until next time.